I'm Mark Callie, Mr. Saltwater Tank, coming to you on behalf of SaltwaterAquarium.com. It's time to put things in motion with your tank, specifically in-tank flow kind of motion, and you do that with Powerheads. Now here's the thing about Powerheads. You don't need them right away on your tank. So if you're building up your list of items that you need to get your tank started, yes, you're going to want Powerheads, but don't let it pause your whole tank build. Get your tank up and running, and then add your Powerheads. So what are Powerheads and what's in-tank flow, and why is it even important? Powerheads creating in-tank flow is important for several reasons. For both fish-only and reef tanks, in-tank flow helps push waste into the overflows and into filters where it can be processed. A lot of waste sitting in your tank leads to nutrient issues, and ain't nobody got time for that. Corals need flow to bring them nutrients and to take away waste, and while fish don't need flow for these reasons, I found my fish are much more active when there's plenty of in-tank flow. If you wanted a still, boring tank with fish that don't move much, you'd get a freshwater tank. Yeah, no. How do you create in-tank flow? With Powerheads, of course. A Powerhead is a water pump that sits in your tank with the purpose of creating flow. Now note that a Powerhead is different than other types of pumps like return pumps. Return pumps are meant to push water through a pipe. A Powerhead is meant to move water inside an aquarium. Powerheads come in two flavors. There's AC Powerheads and there's DC Powerheads. And besides the type of power that they run on, the key difference between AC Powerheads and DC Powerheads is controllability. See, AC Powerheads run at a constant flow all the time. You plug them in and they go, and they run at that speed constantly. For example, this Seashade Voyager, which is an AC Powerhead, it runs at 1,600 gallons per hour. It runs at that speed, that's all you get. Now that's okay because the price point on AC Powerheads is much lower than DC Powerheads. Now DC Powerheads, like this Extreme STC from Seashade, it has variable speed, so you can ramp up the speed or you can ramp down on the speed depending on how much speed you need and how much flow you need in your tank. One of the great things about DC Powerheads is that you can buy more than you need and simply turn it down. This keeps you from having to buy multiple Powerheads over the life of your tank, because if you started with an AC Powerhead at this flow level, then you got more coral in your tank and you needed this flow level, well, all you can do is get rid of that AC Powerhead and then go buy a different size AC Powerhead. With a DC Powerhead, you buy one size, you can ramp it down or you can ramp it up depending on the flow needs on how your tank is maturing. Even if you have a variable speed Powerhead, you still need to size it correctly. Even putting a big variable speed Powerhead like this 13,000 gallons per hour Powerhead in a tank like the Megamatrix 120 is a bad idea. Hello, fish puree. The easiest way to size the Powerhead is to use tank turnover rate. Tank turnover rate is calculated by taking the maximum flow produced by the Powerhead and dividing it by your tank's water volume. For example, the Seashade Extreme STC we're using on the Megamatrix 120 can move 2,250 gallons per hour. Now the Megamatrix 120 holds 120 gallons, so 2,250 divided by 120 equals 18.75. That means the Extreme pump is moving the equivalent of 18.75 times the volume of the Megamatrix 120 in an hour. That's called the tank turnover rate. So is 18.75 good or bad? And how much tank turnover do you need for your tank? It all depends on what you're keeping in your tank. Different types of coral and even different types of fish have different flow needs. Soft corals and fish-only tanks, I run at 20 to 30 times tank turnover rate. Now mixed reef and hard coral tanks, I run at 40 times or better tank turnover rate. Certain types of fish like Acanthoris tanks live in the surge zones of the reef, so if you want to keep these fish, you're going to need lots of in-tank flow. 40 times or better is best for these guys. Also, as your tank matures and the corals grow and get denser, you're going to need more flow. That's not a bad thing. If you've got coral growth, you're going to need more flow. A question that I always get asked is, where do I place the Powerheads in my tank? And there's two dimensions that I think about when I'm placing a Powerhead. One is up and down dimension, and the other one is front to back. Now you can put Powerheads in the back wall of the tank, and unless your tank is over 30 inches wide, I found that those Powerheads on the back wall don't really do much for you other than move around sand. So when I'm thinking about where to place my Powerheads, I'm thinking about, one, where are they going to work in terms of my aquascaping? Because you don't want to blast things on your aquascaping, which is going to be coral, with flow. You don't want to smash with flow. That can disrupt even corals that like a lot of flow. So I want to place it close to the aquascaping so that I'm getting water over the aquascaping, but not directly at the aquascape where I'm smashing that aquascape with flow. So let's look at what that looks like on the Megamatrix 120. On the Megamatrix 120, I'm starting with two Seashade Extreme SDC pumps, and I'm placing one on either side of the tank. One of them will go right here, and one of them will go right here. That way I'm getting the flow down the length of the tank and over the aquascaping without directly blasting the aquascape. Now in time, I know I'm going to need more extremes, and coral growth is going to dictate exactly when I put them in the tank. Pro tip, I like to place one power head closer to the surface of the water to encourage gas exchange. The more the surface of the water is agitated, the more gas exchange I have. This point is particularly important during a power outage event. Since all my tanks have at least a battery backup on at least the power head that's closest to the water's surface, even if the power goes out, I know I'm getting some amount of gas exchange in the tank. Pro tip number 2, regardless of what type of power head you're running, mix up the flow. With DC power heads, you can ramp up or down the flow to create unique flow patterns. With AC power heads, you can turn on and off the power head to mix up the flow in your tank. Whatever you do, just don't leave all your power heads on 100% all the time. When I choose a power head for my saltwater tank, I want to get one that's sized properly for the tank, and I want to get one that's variable speed. That way I can buy one power head and have it for the life of my tank, because I can ramp up or down the flow depending on the in-tank flow needs of my tank. Now if you can't afford a DC power head, don't let that stop your whole build. Go ahead and get yourself an AC power head, get your tank set up, get it rolling, and enjoy it. Then you can build into that DC power head as your budget expands. It gives you a goal to work towards. The last thing I want to do is to see someone stop their build because they can't afford a DC power head or another piece of nice equipment. Get started, start with an AC if you have to, and if you can afford it, absolutely get that DC power head. I'm Mark Callahan, Mr. Saltwater Tank, coming to you on behalf of SaltwaterAquarium.com. I'll catch you in the next episode.